Let me destroy your romantic ideas about lighthouse keepers right now. Imagine you wake up in the year 1347. A terrible disease called the Black Death is killing people across Europe. It kills one person out of every 3. There are no modern medicines, but more important for you, there are no satellites to guide ships safely to land. There are no rescue helicopters. Just you, a pile of rocks built into a tower, and the certainty that you will die alone in the most miserable way possible. Welcome to the real world of keeping a lighthouse in medieval times. Your job is not to look wise and mysterious. Your job is to risk your life every single night. You do this so merchant ships can transport their goods without crashing into the rocks below your tower. And guess what? Half the time they will crash anyway. You are not a romantic character from a love story. You are a desperate person who took this job because every other choice was worse. Maybe you were running from people you owed money to. Maybe you committed a crime, and this job saved you from having your hand cut off. Maybe you are so poor that risking death every night for a few coins seemed reasonable. The reality is this: you will spend months or years trapped in a stone cylinder. You will slowly go insane from being alone. Your body will break down from constant exposure to smoke, wind, and bitter cold. You will develop a chronic cough that sounds like a dying animal. Your hands will crack and bleed from constant burns. Your back will permanently curve from carrying heavy loads up endless stone steps. And the worst part? Everyone on land thinks you are already dead. They have written you off the moment you walked up that tower. To them, you are just another casualty waiting to happen. You are a ghost operating a beacon until the sea finally claims you. So forget everything you think you know about lighthouse keepers. This is not a peaceful retreat from society. This is survival horror, medieval style. The moment you accept this position, you must leave behind any notion of comfort or convenience. As you approach your new home for the first time, walking up the rocky path with your meager possessions, the full reality of your situation becomes clear. Standing before you is not a quaint cottage by the sea, but a fortress of stone that will serve as both your workplace and your prison. Your new home is a circular stone tower. It gets narrower as it rises, like a giant's finger pointing at the sky. The walls are 3 feet thick. This sounds impressive until you realize they are your prison bars. Each level is one cramped circular room stacked on top of another. A spiral staircase connects them. This staircase wants to kill you. The bottom level is your storage room. Here you keep your precious supply of wood, coal, and oil. You also store the salted fish and hard bread that make up your entire diet. The walls here weep constantly with moisture. This is not a metaphor. Water seeps through the stone joints and runs down the walls in endless tears. Everything becomes damp. Pools of stagnant water form where mosquitoes breed in warmer months. Climb the narrow spiral stairs to the second level. You will find what passes for your living quarters. The room is maybe 12 feet across at its widest point. The ceiling is so low you cannot stand upright near the walls. There is no furniture because there is no room for furniture. You will sleep on a pile of straw that you have stuffed into a rough cloth sack. This assumes you can keep it dry enough to avoid growing mushrooms. Privacy does not exist here. The entire tower is essentially one vertical room with stone platforms. Every sound echoes up and down the structure. Every smell has nowhere to go. Your unwashed body, your rotting food, your bodily waste. You will become intimately familiar with your own stench within a week. The windows are not really windows. They are rectangular holes cut in the stone walls. They let you see approaching ships. They also let in every drop of rain, every blast of wind, and every frigid draft that wants to freeze you solid. There is no glass, because glass is for rich people. There are no shutters, because shutters would block your view of the sea. You will stuff these openings with whatever rags you can find during storms, but the wind will tear them out and send them spinning into the darkness. Your spiral staircase is a death trap, disguised as architecture. Each step is worn smooth by previous lighthouse keepers. They are slick with moisture, and just narrow enough to catch your foot if you are not careful. The center post is so thick that you cannot see around it. This means you will regularly slam into other people or things coming the other way. In the dark, with your arms full of fuel, these stairs become a nightmare obstacle course. A single wrong step means tumbling down 30 feet of stone steps. The third level is where you will spend most of your time during the day. Here you maintain your equipment and watch for ships. You keep your signal flags, your spare wicks, and your collection of increasingly paranoid observations. You watch the movements of clouds, birds, and distant sails. The walls are scarred with the desperate scratchings of previous keepers, tallies of days survived, crude drawings of women they will never see again, and increasingly illegible prayers to saints who apparently do not hear prayers from lighthouse towers. At night, you will sleep with the rats, not metaphorically, actual rats. They live in the walls and emerge after dark to investigate your food stores. They occasionally nibble on your feet while you sleep. They are not afraid of you because they know you cannot catch them in the dark. They have learned that you drop crumbs when you eat. Some nights, you will hear them scratching inside the walls. They have conversations in their rat language about how pathetic you are. The smell of your tower is a complex mixture: mold, smoke, unwashed human, rotting food, and something else you cannot quite identify. You suspect it is the lingering essence of previous keepers who died at their posts. It gets into your clothes, your hair, your skin. After a month, you will stop noticing it. After 3 months, you will realize you have become part of it. Your ceiling is the floor of the beacon room above. It is stained black with decades of soot and smoke. Sometimes, drops of condensation mixed with soot will fall on your face while you are trying to sleep. This leaves you with the taste of old fires and dead lighthouse keepers in your mouth. This is your world now. A stone cylinder barely wide enough to stretch your arms. The walls sweat. The stairs want to kill you. The only creatures who visit regularly are rats and the occasional seabird that flies in through your window holes to die on your floor. But your true torment awaits you at the very top of this stone prison. As the sun sets each day, you must make your way to the beacon room, where the real work begins. This daily journey upward marks the transition from the relative safety of your living quarters to the place where you will slowly destroy yourself in service to ships you may never see. The beacon room sits at the top of your tower like a crown of misery. This is where you will spend your nights feeding an open fire that burns in a metal container. You send smoke and sparks into the darkness to guide ships safely to harbor. It is also where you will slowly poison yourself to death with smoke while constantly risking being burned alive. Every morning you begin the ritual that will define your existence. You haul fuel up the spiral staircase. Wood first, thick logs that you carry 2 at a time. You balance them on your shoulders as you climb the narrow steps. Your back screams with each step. Your legs shake from the effort. The logs scrape against the stone walls, sending splinters into your face and arms. But wood alone will not work. You need coal for the really dark nights. When the wind howls and the rain turns horizontal, coal burns hotter and brighter than wood, but it is also heavier, much heavier. You carry it up in hemp sacks, 1 at a time. You stop every few steps to rest and curse whatever decisions led you to this moment. Your shoulders will develop permanent grooves from the rope handles. Your hands will crack and bleed from the rough sacks. On a typical day, you will make 30 trips up and down those stairs. That is over 3,000 steps, carrying heavy loads, on stairs designed by someone who clearly hated lighthouse keepers. Your legs will develop the distinctive bow-legged stance of a man who has spent too many hours climbing narrow spiral stairs with heavy loads. Once the sun sets, your real work begins. You light the beacon fire and immediately begin your nightly battle against the elements. The wind does not just blow at this height, it screams. It tears at the flames, sending sparks and burning embers flying in every direction. Some of these sparks will land on your clothes. They burn holes through the fabric and leave small, painful burns on your skin. Others will land on the wooden platform around the fire container, starting small fires that you must stomp out while trying to keep the main fire burning. The smoke is your constant companion and eventual killer. There is no chimney in your beacon room because chimneys are complex engineering. Your tower was built by people who prioritized cheap and functional over will not slowly murder the operator. The smoke hangs in the air around you, burning your eyes until they water constantly. You will develop a cough within your first week, a harsh, rattling sound that gets worse every night. Your lungs are filling with soot and ash. Every breath you take in that beacon room is shortening your life. You will wake up each morning spitting black phlegm, your throat raw and painful. After a few months, you will notice you cannot climb the stairs without gasping for air. After a year, if you last that long, you will sound like a dying horse every time you breathe. The metal fire container becomes scorching hot during operation. You need to adjust the logs, add coal, and clear ash throughout the night. This means reaching over and around a container of burning metal that is hot enough to instantly sear your flesh. You will develop a collection of burns on your arms and hands, small circular scars from accidental contact with the container's edges, longer burns from sparks that land on your skin, the occasional serious burn from when you slip and grab the hot metal to steady yourself. Your worst nightmare is the tower catching fire. It is not a matter of if, it is when. Previous lighthouse keepers have died when their beacon fires spread to the wooden platforms, the timber supports, or the dried straw of their bedding. You will lie awake during your few hours of rest, listening to every creak and crack of the tower. You wonder if that sound was just the wind or the beginning of your fiery death. The wind at your height is a living thing that wants to kill you. It does not just blow, it punches, shoves, and tries to tear you apart. On storm nights, you need to shield the fire with your own body. You stand between the fire container and the wind while rain lashes your face and lightning illuminates the chaos around you. The wind will try to push you over the edge of your platform, and there is no railing to catch you. One gust at the wrong moment, and you will tumble into the darkness below. Every night, you will feed the fire and slowly feed yourself to it as well. The smoke will coat your lungs, the sparks will burn your skin, and the constant terror of being burned alive will eat away at your sanity. But you will keep that beacon burning, because the alternative is explaining to angry merchants why their ships are scattered across the rocks below your tower. And tomorrow night, you will climb those stairs again, light another fire, and continue your slow transformation from human being to smoke-damaged ghost haunting a stone tower by the sea. As the weeks turn to months in this stone prison, the physical torment of your daily duties becomes overshadowed by a more insidious enemy. The isolation begins to work on your mind like water slowly wearing away stone. What starts as simple loneliness evolves into something far more dangerous, a gradual dissolution of your connection to the human world, and eventually to reality itself. The first month you count days, you scratch marks into stone with your eating knife, 31 careful lines, like a prisoner marking time in jail. By the second month you stop counting. What is the point? Time becomes grey soup. Dawn flows into night without difference. You wake when the fire dies. You sleep when tiredness takes you. You eat when hunger bites. The silence breaks you first. Not the obvious silence. Storms still rage. Waves still crash. Wind still screams through gaps in the tower. But human silence breaks you. No conversation. No laughter. No one saying good morning. Your ears search desperately for voices that never come. So you start talking to seabirds, just simple comments. Whole rough weather today, yes? You say to a large white bird. The bird ignores you completely, but desperation makes fools of all people. Soon you have full conversations with the local black water birds. The fish are late this season. You tell a sleek black bird on your window. Maybe they took a different path. What do you think? The bird cleans its feathers. It acts like it has heard this conversation 12 times this week. You think this means it agrees. The worst part is not talking to birds. The worst part is when they seem to talk back. Not really, of course. You are not completely mad, yet, but your brain needs human contact. It starts filling empty spaces. You think you hear the white bird complain about your cooking. The black bird definitely has opinions about your beard. The smaller birds gossip about you like village women at a well. Your own voice becomes strange. After weeks of silence, it cracks when you speak. Words feel foreign in your mouth, like trying to remember a language from childhood. You practice conversations with imaginary visitors. You play both parts until you forget which voice is yours. Welcome to my tower, you say to empty air. Then you walk to the other side of the room. Thank you for having me, good keeper. Nice place you have here. Not much, but it is home. Can I offer you some beer? I am afraid it has gone bad. That is fine. I do not drink. Smart man, very smart. Letters from home arrive sometimes. The supply boat comes monthly when weather allows. Sometimes you wait 3 months between deliveries. When letters do arrive, they are often water damaged. The ink runs like tears down paper. Your wife's news becomes a puzzle of missing words. You read them anyway. You fill empty spaces with desperate imagination. Maybe your son took his first steps. Maybe his first holy ceremony. Could be his first sickness. The mystery is worse than no news at all. The letters you write back are equally sad. How do you explain that you named the rats in your room? That you bet with yourself on which wave will be tallest each day? that you spent 3 hours yesterday arguing with your reflection about beard care. All is well here, you write instead. The beacon burns bright. Weather has been fair. I remain your loving husband. All lies. The beacon smokes like a dying dragon. The weather changes more than a woman choosing clothes. You are about as loving as a cat in a doghouse, but what else can you write? Your social skills disappear like unused muscles. When the supply boat arrives, you throw yourself at the crew. You are desperate for human contact. But words come out wrong. Too fast. Too eager. You talk about weather and bird behavior, while sailors back away. They think you are cursed or mad. They are not wrong. The blackbirds know when storms come. You tell the boat captain urgently. You grab his sleeve. 3 days before, they change how they fly. And the rats know too, when they start gathering extra food. The captain nods politely. He hurries to unload your supplies. They do not stay long. You would not want to chat with you either. The strange visions start small. Shadows move when they should not. Sounds that might be voices on the wind. You tell yourself it is isolation, poor food, constant worry. You blame it on too much sadness in your blood. But knowing the cause does not stop it. You see figures on rocks below, waving for help. You hear knocking at your door at midnight. Voices call your name from deep in the tower. They echo up through stone stairs like ghosts climbing. The worst is when you see your family. Your wife appears in the doorway, solid as life. She asks why you have not come home for dinner. Your children play in the corner. Their laughter sounds like silver bells. For precious moments, you forget where you are. You try to hold them, speak to them. Your arms close on empty air. Poor food makes it worse. You eat mainly salt fish and hard bread. Whatever vegetables survive the trip from shore. Fresh meat is a distant memory. Your body starts eating itself. Your mind follows. Colors seem brighter, sounds sharper. Reality becomes negotiable. You float through days like a ghost haunting your own life. Sometimes you catch yourself talking with no memory of starting. You explain beacon care to someone who is not there. You gesture at equipment that does not exist. Part of your mind watches this with cold interest. Like watching a street performer you cannot understand. By the 6th month, you stop telling thoughts from speech. Internal voice becomes external conversation, becomes talks with invisible friends. You announce each random thought to an audience of seabirds and stone walls. The isolation is complete now. You are a hermit in a tower, a madman talking to shadows, a keeper of light who barely remembers human warmth. Your reflection in the polished brass shows a wild-eyed stranger, matted hair, and a beard that could house mice. And still, the beacon must burn. Still, ships depend on your light. Still, you climb those stairs, each night. You tend that flame. You maintain that signal. Because madness or not, visions or not, you are the lighthouse keeper. And the sea does not care about your sanity. While your mind slowly fragments in the isolation of your tower, another enemy awaits outside. The weather itself becomes a personal adversary, testing not just your endurance but your very will to survive. Day after day, season after season, the elements assault your stone fortress with a relentless fury that makes your internal struggles seem almost peaceful by comparison. The Atlantic Ocean does not just want to kill you, it wants to make you suffer first, like a cat playing with a mouse. It toys with your tower, it tests defenses, it looks for weaknesses, and you, trapped inside, experience every cruel experiment. Weather prediction in this time goes about as far as red sky at night means good weather tomorrow. No weather satellites, no pressure readings, no cheerful morning forecasts. You read the signs like a desperate fortune teller trying to predict your own death. Cloud formations, wind direction, the behavior of seabirds. These are your only clues. The storms arrive without invitation. They roll in from the western horizon like grey armies marching to war. First comes the wind. It screams across the water with the voice of 1,000 demons. It hits your tower with the force of a battering ram. Suddenly you understand why they built these things from stone blocks that could anchor a church. The tower sways, not much, a few inches at most, but when you are 90 feet above jagged rocks, a few inches feels like a death sentence. The stones groan under pressure. Ancient cement cries out in protest. You brace yourself in the doorway. You watch the beacon flame dance like a drunk sailor. You wonder if this is the storm that finally brings your tower down. The rain follows the wind. It arrives in sheets so thick they are less like water and more like a solid wall of misery. It drives sideways into your tower. It finds every crack, every gap between stones. Your waterproof rooms become a series of indoor waterfalls. Everything you own is soaked within minutes. Your clothes, your bedding, your precious supply of dry firewood. But rain is gentle compared to hail. Ice stones the size of eggs hammer the tower like artillery. They shatter against stone walls with cracks like gunfire. Any exposed flesh becomes a canvas for purple bruises. You learn to retreat to the tower's core during hailstorms. You huddle in the darkest corner, while nature hurls frozen fury at your sanctuary. The salt spray is your constant companion, a fine mist that gets into everything with the patience of a master torturer. It coats your skin in a layer of crystals that crack and burn. Your lips split and bleed. Your hands become raw, cracked landscapes of pain. The salt gets into your wounds, your eyes, your food. Everything tastes of brine and suffering. Your metal tools die first under the salt's attack. The iron poker you use for the beacon develops rust that spreads like disease. Your knife blade pits and corrodes until it is more decoration than tool. The hinges on your door seize up. They scream in protest when you try to open them. Even the brass fittings develop a green coating that looks like the skin of a drowned corpse. But salt does not stop with your equipment. It comes for you too. Your hair becomes stiff and brittle. It breaks off in handfuls. Your skin takes on a permanent coating of crystalline grit. No amount of scrubbing can remove it. But as you stand there in your mobile ecosystem of discomfort, scratching at rashes that have become old friends, you'll realize that your trials have only begun. Because maintaining your beacon of hope requires not just surviving the elements, but mastering them. And that's where the real nightmare begins. The true horror of your existence isn't just enduring these conditions. It's watching helplessly as ships approach your light, knowing that sometimes your best efforts simply aren't enough. Your warning light burns bright tonight. The flame dances against polished metal mirrors. It sends its glow across the dark, angry waters. You have done everything right tonight. You trimmed the oil wick. You positioned the light reflectors correctly. You made the fire as bright as possible. The light reaches 3 miles on clear nights, maybe 4 miles if God helps you. It's not enough. The trading ship out there is fighting the storm. She sits 5 miles from your tower. You can see her tall wooden masts swaying wildly. Her cloth sails are torn to pieces by the wind. The crew rows desperately toward your light, but the ocean current is stronger than their efforts. You watch the ship lose ground yard by terrible yard. Then she disappears behind the rocky hill that blocks your view. The sound reaches you 30 seconds later, wood hitting stone, but not the gentle touch of a boat finding safety. This is the wet crack of bones breaking, the scream of timber giving up to nature's force, the most expensive wooden furniture being destroyed by a giant machine. That's what a 300-ton trading ship sounds like when it hits your underwater rocks at 20 knots. Then come the human sounds. Ships from this time period carried crews of 20 to 50 men, or the Santa Elena that just died on your rocks held 37 souls. You know this because you'll count the bodies over the next 3 days. The tide will bring them to your shore like terrible gifts. You taste salt in your sleep. You dream of it. You wake with it coating your teeth like sand. The fog is perhaps the cruelest torture of all. It rolls in without warning, thick as wool, blind as justice. One moment you can see the mainland. The next you are trapped in a grey void where your own hand disappears when you stretch your arm. The fog muffles sound. It distorts distance. It turns your world into a shadowland where nothing is certain. During fog, you cannot tell if your beacon works properly. The light disappears mere feet from the lens. It is swallowed by the grey mass like a candle in a cave. Ships could be passing 20 yards away, and you would never know, or they could be heading straight for the rocks. Their crews trust your light to guide them safely. The responsibility weighs on you like a physical burden. The fog plays tricks with your mind. Your mind is already strained by isolation and poor food. Sounds carry strangely. A seabird's cry becomes a human scream. The crash of waves becomes the sound of splintering wood. You hear ships' bells, shouting voices, the groan of timber under stress. You rush to the beacon. You peer into the grey wall. You see nothing but more grey. Sometimes the fog lasts for days. You measure time by the rhythm of your own breathing, of the slow burn of beacon fuel, the gradual gnawing of hunger. The world beyond your tower ceases to exist. You float in a grey limbo, a keeper of light in a world that has forgotten the sun. Winter brings its own special torments. The North Atlantic in January is not a place meant for human life. The cold seeps through stone walls that should be solid. It turns your tower into a vertical icebox. Your breath fogs in the air, even indoors. Water left standing overnight develops a skin of ice thick enough to crack the container. Your chamber pot freezes solid. It becomes a porcelain sculpture of human necessity. You learn to chip ice from the inside of your water barrel each morning. You heat it over the beacon flame just to get something liquid to drink. Your blankets become stiff with frost. You sleep in your clothes, boots, and cloak. You wrap around yourself like a human bundle of misery. The cold makes everything harder. Your fingers lose skill. They fumble with simple tasks. Lighting the beacon becomes an ordeal as flint and steel slip from numb hands. The leather hinges on your supply chest crack and split. Even the rats abandon you. They retreat to whatever warm corners they can find in the tower's depths. But winter's greatest weapon is the wind. It howls around your tower with the voice of the damned. It finds every crack, every gap, every weakness. It drives through the walls like invisible knives. It cuts through your layers of wool and leather as if they were spider webs. The wind chill drops temperatures to levels that would make a polar bear weep. You are trapped in the middle of it with nothing but old-fashioned insulation and stubborn determination. Lightning is the tower's most immediate threat. Your beacon, perched atop 90 feet of stone, is essentially a lightning rod, advertising its presence to every thunderstorm in the Atlantic. When electrical storms roll in, you become a very small, very frightened man, trapped in a very tall, very tempting target. Lightning strikes without warning. It turns night into day for split seconds that burn themselves into your eyes. The thunder follows immediately. You are too close for the usual delay between flash and boom. The sound hits you like a physical blow. It rattles your bones. It stops your heart for a terrifying moment. When lightning strikes your tower directly, which happens more often than you would like, the entire structure becomes a conductor. The stone walls hum with electricity. Your hair stands on end. The metal fittings spark and crackle. You taste copper in your mouth. You smell the sharp ozone scent of electrical discharge. The worst storms combine all these elements into a symphony of natural violence. Hurricane-force winds drive salt spray sideways through the air, while hail pounds the tower like artillery. Lightning splits the sky while thunder shakes the foundation. Rain falls in sheets so thick you cannot see the beacon flame 3 feet away. During these storms, you understand why ancient sailors invented sea gods. The ocean becomes a living thing, a malevolent entity that wants nothing more than to crush your tower and scatter your bones across the seafloor. The waves grow to impossible heights, towering walls of water that dwarf your tower. They crash against the rocks below with the sound of the world ending. They send spray high enough to coat your beacon housing. The tower flexes and sways like a reed in the wind. You feel it moving beneath your feet, a slow, sickening roll that makes your stomach churn. The mortar between stones cracks and shifts. Dust rains down from the ceiling with each gust. You lie on your stone floor, arms spread wide. You press yourself against the only solid thing in a world gone mad. These storms can last for days, 3, 4, sometimes 5 days of constant battering while you huddle in your tower like a mouse in a grain container during harvest. You run out of dry firewood, dry food, dry clothes. Everything is soaked, salt-crusted, and miserable. You tend the beacon with hands that shake from cold and exhaustion. You keep that flame alive because it is the only thing standing between passing ships and the rocks that want to claim them. And through it all, you are alone. No rescue coming, no relief arriving, no end in sight, except the storm's own exhaustion. You are a single human being pitted against the full fury of the North Atlantic. You are armed with nothing but stone walls and stubborn determination. The weather does not care about your fear, your discomfort, or your survival. It simply is, a force of nature that will test your tower, your equipment, and your sanity until one of them breaks. Usually it is the sanity that goes first. You thought prison food was bad. Welcome to the Lighthouse Keeper's food store. Every meal is a fight with death. Every bite tastes like sadness. Let's start with your main food, fish. Not fresh fish. That's for people who live near towns. No, you get salted fish. These fish have been sitting in wooden barrels for months, maybe years. The salt-to-fish ratio is like the Dead Sea. The texture feels like leather that angry cows have chewed. You'll cut away at these dried fish bodies with your knife. People in old times called this stockfish. The food's so hard it can be used as a weapon. The way they preserve fish is brutal but clever. First, they cut open the fish and split them like tiny books. Then came the salt, pounds and pounds of it. They packed salt into every crack until the fish looked buried in snow. The salt pulls out water through a natural process. This turns your dinner into a mummy. After weeks of this treatment, the fish becomes so hard you could use them as roof tiles. Some lighthouses probably did use them this way. You'll spend 20 minutes soaking one piece of fish just to make it soft enough to chew. The water you use for soaking, that becomes tomorrow's soup base. You can't waste water when you live alone on a rock. The soup tastes like the ocean's armpit, but it has calories. Calories keep you alive when the wind tries to blow you into the sea. Then there's the hardtack, those famous biscuits that could survive the end of the world. Each one is a perfect cube of flour, water, and suffering. They're baked until they become as hard as stone. You'll break teeth trying to eat them dry, so you learn to soak them in any liquid you can find. Tea, if you're lucky. That armpit soup we mentioned. Your own tears, if you're feeling dramatic. The hardtack comes alive with weevils, tiny beetles, that make homes in the flour before it's even baked. You'll learn to tap each biscuit against the table. Listen for the sounds of tiny legs running for cover. Some keepers accept the extra protein. Others try to pick out the bugs one by one. This is an impossible task that will drive you mad faster than the loneliness. But here's the thing about weevils. They're probably the freshest protein you'll get. The biscuit makers of old times weren't worried about quality control. If bugs were already in the flour, they became part of the recipe. Think of it as early protein addition. That is, if you can stomach eating something that's been using your dinner as a nursery. Your water situation is a special kind of hell. The Lighthouse water tank collects rainwater. This sounds refreshing until you realize it's been sitting in a stone container for months. The water develops a living system of green slime, dead insects, and things that probably shouldn't exist in nature. The water tastes like pond scum mixed with dead fish and hopelessness. You'll strain it through cloth, but that only catches the chunks big enough to chew. Sometimes, if you're really unlucky, seawater leaks into your fresh water supply. This creates a bitter mixture that's too salty to drink, but not salty enough to preserve food. It's the worst of both worlds. This water dehydrates you while giving you violent stomach cramps. You'll drink it anyway. The alternative is death, and death seems too easy after months of eating fish leather and insect biscuits. A disease called scurvy becomes your constant companion. This vitamin C shortage turns your mouth into a horror show. Your gums bleed when you breathe, teeth loosen and fall out like autumn leaves, skin bruises if you look at it wrong. People in old times understood scurvy as mysterious ship disease that makes your teeth fall out, so prevention didn't exist. You'll watch your body slowly fall apart, one bleeding gum at a time. The irony is that fresh fish could prevent scurvy, but fresh fish requires being near fishing areas. You need proper equipment and skills to catch them. You're stuck on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Your net is mostly holes. Your fishing skills would embarrass a house cat. The fish you can catch are usually too small to bother with, or too large to pull up the cliff face without proper equipment. Enter the rats. These aren't cute pet store rats. These are fortress rats from old times. They're descendants of creatures that survived the Black Death by being too tough and too smart to die. They're your roommates, your competitors for food, and occasionally your dinner. You'll set traps using pieces of your precious hardtack as bait. This creates a strange economy where you trade calories for the chance at protein. Catching rats becomes a skill you never thought you'd need. You'll learn their patterns, their favorite routes, their tiny rat politics. Some keepers name them. They create elaborate stories about rat families and rat dramas. Others see them purely as moving meat. Either way, you'll develop a relationship with these creatures. It's equal parts hunter and hunted, because the rats are also eyeing your food stores with the same calculating hunger. Preparing rat for dinner is its own adventure. You'll skin them with the same knife you use for fish. Try not to think about old-time cleanliness standards. The meat is surprisingly lean. You just have to get past the mental barrier of eating something that was probably chewing on your boots yesterday. Some keepers develop elaborate rat recipes: rat stew, rat jerky, rat and hardtack casserole. Desperation breeds creativity. The old-time food preservation techniques that fill your pantry are marvels of necessity over taste. Everything is salt-cured, dried to the point of becoming fossils, stored in conditions that would horrify modern health inspectors. Your food supply is less pantry and more archaeological dig site of ancient proteins. But here's the beautiful irony. Despite the horror show of your daily menu, you'll find yourself looking forward to meals. When your existence is reduced to basic survival, even fish leather becomes a small celebration. You'll develop preferences. This barrel of salted fish is better than that one. These weevils are fresher than those ones. Your taste buds adapt to circumstances that would send modern food critics into therapy. The mental impact of this constant nutritional disappointment adds to your isolation. Food is comfort, culture, connection to humanity. When every meal tastes like punishment, you lose another thread connecting you to the civilized world. You'll dream of fresh bread, of fruit that isn't dried into submission, of meat that doesn't require an archaeological expedition to identify. And yet, somehow you'll survive on this diet of despair. Your body will adapt. Your taste buds will surrender. You'll find yourself grateful for the basic fact of having anything to eat at all. The rats will teach you about resourcefulness. The hardtack will teach you about patience. The rotting fish will teach you about the thin line between food and suffering. But even as you master the art of survival eating, another challenge awaits. One that clings to your skin like a second, considerably less comfortable skin. The very clothes on your back become another source of constant torment, transforming from protection into a wearable prison of dampness and decay. Congratulations, you've mastered the art of eating like a prisoner from old times. Now let's talk about your clothes. If you can call them that, your clothes aren't just clothing, they're a wearable monument to human suffering. They're a fabric testament to the limits of old-time cloth technology when faced with the ocean's relentless attack. Your uniform begins with wool, not the soft, processed wool of modern sweaters. This is rough, scratchy wool that feels like wearing a hair shirt made of guilt. Old-time wool processing involved beating, stretching, and compressing sheep hair. They did this until it achieved the texture of friendly sandpaper. This wool is your base layer, your primary defense against the elements, and your constant source of irritation for the next several months. The genius of wool lies in its ability to keep warmth even when wet. The tragedy of wool lies in its complete inability to ever actually dry. Your wool shirt, wool pants, and wool undergarments exist in a perpetual state of dampness. This ranges from slightly moist to actively dripping. The wool fibers absorb moisture from the air, your sweat, the constant mist, and the occasional rogue wave that crashes over your lighthouse during storms. You'll learn to recognize different levels of wool wetness. There's morning dampness, which is almost bearable. Midday clamminess, which makes you want to crawl out of your skin. Evening sogginess, which turns every movement into a cold, wet embrace. And storm-time saturation, which is like being hugged by the ocean itself. Except the ocean has commitment issues and won't let go. The salt changes everything. Modern people think of salt as seasoning, but you'll experience it as a lifestyle. Salt spray covers every surface of your lighthouse, including you. It gets into your clothes, creating a crystal layer. This transforms your wool garments into cheese graters from old times. Every step, every movement, every breath involves salt crystals grinding against your skin, like tiny persistent torture devices. Your wool absorbs this salt like a sponge. This creates a concentrated brine that sits against your skin 24 hours a day. The salt draws moisture from your body. This leaves you simultaneously dehydrated and damp. It's a contradiction that defies logic, but perfectly captures the lighthouse keeper experience. You're constantly wet yet constantly thirsty. Always cold yet always sweating. The chafing begins immediately. Salt-crusted wool against human skin creates friction that would impress interrogators from old times. Your inner thighs, armpits, and neck develop raw patches that never quite heal. The salt prevents proper scab formation. You'll develop a peculiar walking style designed to minimize wool-on-skin contact. A lighthouse keeper shuffle that makes you look like you're perpetually uncomfortable, which you are. Your leather boots represent old-time craftsmanship at its most hopeful. Made from cowhide treated with plant tannins, they're designed to protect your feet from rocks, cold, and the occasional rat bite. What they're not designed for is constant exposure to salt water. This breaks down the leather's molecular structure and transforms your boots into foot-shaped sponges. The leather begins its breakdown process immediately. Salt water seeps through the seams. This creates a footbath of concentrated brine that would make ancient Romans jealous. The leather softens, stretches, and develops a smell. This smell can only be described as low tide mixed with regret. Your boots become an ecosystem unto themselves. They host bacteria, fungi, and possibly new forms of life that science hasn't yet discovered. The smell is legendary. Imagine taking a fish market, leaving it in the sun for a week, then strapping it to your feet. That's your boots on a good day. On bad days, when the leather has absorbed enough salt water to achieve sentience, the smell becomes a living thing. It follows you around like a loyal, horrifically odorous pet. Your boots leak, of course. The old-time boot-making process involved stitching pieces of leather together with thread. This thread is about as waterproof as a fishing net. Water enters through the seams, the eyelets, and occasionally through molecular osmosis. Your feet exist in a constant state of dampness that ranges from uncomfortably moist to actively pruning. The mental impact of never having dry feet cannot be overstated. Dry feet are a basic human comfort, a foundation of civilization. When your feet are perpetually wet, cold, and encased in leather that smells like the ocean's armpit, you lose touch with fundamental human dignity. You'll find yourself fantasizing about dry socks with the fervor of a religious mystic contemplating paradise. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. You don't change clothes, not for weeks, sometimes months. Old-time laundering involved beating clothes with rocks, boiling them in lye, and hanging them to dry. These processes require time, resources, and most importantly, backup clothing. You have none of these luxuries. Your single set of clothes becomes your second skin, literally. The wool fibers embed themselves in your body hair. This creates a textile symbiosis that would fascinate anthropologists. Your shirt and pants mold to your body shape. They create permanent wrinkles that map your daily routines. You'll develop an intimate relationship with every seam, every patch, every hole in your garments. The constant dampness creates perfect conditions for fungal growth. Your clothes become a mobile greenhouse for organisms that thrive in warm, wet, salty conditions. You'll develop skin conditions that don't have names. Rashes that would puzzle physicians from old times. Itches that exist in places you didn't know could itch. The fungi growing in your clothes creates its own ecosystem, complete with different species, occupying different textile territories. Your skin adapts to this constant assault through a process that's equal parts evolution and resignation. You'll develop calluses in places that shouldn't have calluses, skin that's perpetually red and irritated, a tolerance for discomfort that would impress saints from old times. Your body learns to coexist with salt, wool, and fungal infections in a way that redefines the concept of normal. Old-time textile technology reaches its limits when confronted with lighthouse conditions. The wool processing techniques that worked perfectly well for inland farmers and craftsmen prove inadequate for constant sea exposure. Your clothes were designed for occasional dampness, not perpetual saturation. They're fighting a losing battle against the ocean's relentless assault. The mental impact of wearing the same salt-crusted, fungus-inhabited, perpetually damp clothes for months cannot be understated. Clothing is identity, comfort, protection. When your clothes become a source of constant discomfort, you lose another connection to human civilization. You'll forget what it feels like to put on clean, dry clothes, to feel fabric that doesn't scrape against your skin like pennants from old times. But perhaps the cruelest irony is that you'll become attached to these miserable garments. They're your constant companions, your primary protection against the elements, your second skin. You'll develop an almost Stockholm Syndrome relationship with your wool shirt, simultaneously hating and depending on it for survival. You'll patch holes with whatever materials you can find, bits of rope, strips of leather, pieces of sailcloth. Your clothes become a textile archaeology of your lighthouse experience. Each patch tells a story of survival, adaptation, and the human capacity to endure discomfort. This discomfort would drive most people to madness. The salt stains everything permanently. Your clothes develop a tie-dye pattern of white salt crystals. This marks you as clearly as a guild badge from old times. You become a walking advertisement for the lighthouse keeper profession, identifiable from a distance by the distinctive pattern of salt deposits on your garments. And yet, somehow you'll take a perverse pride in your uniform of misery. These clothes have kept you alive, protected you from the elements, survived conditions that would destroy modern garments in days. Your salt-stained, fungus-infected, perpetually damp wool becomes a badge of honor, proof that you've survived where others would have perished. But as you stand there in your mobile ecosystem of discomfort, scratching at rashes that have become old friends, you'll realize that your trials have only begun, because maintaining your beacon of hope requires not just surviving the elements, but mastering them. And that's where the real nightmare begins. The true horror of your existence isn't just enduring these conditions, it's watching helplessly as ships approach your light, knowing that sometimes your best efforts simply aren't enough. Your warning light burns bright tonight. The flame dances against polished metal mirrors. It sends its glow across the dark, angry waters. You have done everything right tonight. You trimmed the oil wick. You positioned the light reflectors correctly. You made the fire as bright as possible. The light reaches 3 miles on clear nights, maybe 4 miles if God helps you. It's not enough. The trading ship out there is fighting the storm. She sits 5 miles from your tower. You can see her tall wooden masts swaying wildly. Her cloth sails are torn to pieces by the wind. The crew rows desperately toward your light, but the ocean current is stronger than their efforts. You watch the ship lose ground, yard by terrible yard. Then she disappears behind the rocky hill that blocks your view. The sound reaches you 30 seconds later, wood hitting stone, but not the gentle touch of a boat finding safety. This is the wet crack of bones breaking, the scream of timber giving up to nature's force, the most expensive wooden furniture being destroyed by a giant machine. That's what a 300-ton trading ship sounds like when it hits your underwater rocks at 20 knots. Then come the human sounds. Ships from this time period carried crews of 20 to 50 men. The Santa Elena that just died on your rocks held 37 souls. You know this, because you'll count the bodies over the next 3 days. The tide will bring them to your shore like terrible gifts. 37 men who woke up this morning thinking about their wives, their children, their debts, their dreams. Now they're learning that salt water has the same temperature as human blood. The ocean doesn't care about your plans. You can hear them dying. The distance makes their screams quieter, but sound travels well over water at night. They're calling for help, for God, for their mothers. Some are already silent. The lucky ones took a wooden beam to the head. Others got tangled in ship ropes and drowned quickly. A few might reach the rocks. They'll hold on to stone covered with sharp sea creatures. The freezing water will turn their fingers useless. The tide will claim them anyway. You light another torch and wave it wildly. You're trying to guide any survivors toward the narrow beach below your tower. It's a useless gesture. Like trying to stop a charging bull with a feather. The current runs east here. It pulls everything toward the sharp stones that extend another 100 yards past your tiny island. Even if someone reaches the rocks, the waves will pound them against the granite. They'll become nothing but red foam and broken bones. This is the 4th ship this month. The worst part isn't the dying, it's the almost saving. 2 weeks ago, a small fishing boat sank just beyond the dangerous rocks. Close enough that you could see the faces of the men aboard. You could watch them point at your light and row desperately toward safety. The distance was maybe 200 yards. You've seen men swim farther during village festivals, racing for prize coins thrown into calm harbors. But storms don't care about your swimming abilities. The current caught them. You watched helplessly while the sea pushed them sideways into the rocks. One man almost made it. He grabbed onto a ledge just below your tower. His fingers were white with effort. You climbed down as far as you dared. You reached out with a rope. You got within 5 feet of saving him. He looked you in the eye when the wave took him. Just for a second, your eyes met his. You saw the exact moment hope died in his face. Then the water closed over his head. He was gone. His name was Willem. He had 6 children. You know this because his body washed up the next morning. There was a letter in his pocket, written in careful handwriting by someone who learned to read and write late in life. It spoke of fish prices and winter preparations, our daughter's upcoming wedding. The ink ran in the salt water, but you could still read the words, "Tell Anna that her father loves her more than all the fish in the sea." You buried Willem above the tide line, in the little area where you plant all your failures. 23 graves now. Some are empty because the sea keeps its own. 23 times you've been close enough to save someone and couldn't. 23 times you've watched hope die in human eyes. The sea raiders make it worse. Smart sea raiders know that lighthouse keepers are predictable. You light your warning beacon every night. Same time, same place. Ships see the light and think it marks safe passage. But what if the light is lying? What if those helpful people maintaining the beacon have been paid to guide ships not around the rocks, but onto them? You've seen the false lights. Ships approaching from the south, just after sunset, following what they think is your beacon, except your beacon is to the north. That light they're following is a lantern held by men with knives and no souls. By the time the ship's captain realizes his mistake, he's already committed to the approach. The false light goes dark. The ship strikes rocks that shouldn't be there. The raiders wade out to collect their prizes. The worst part is that they use your reputation. Ships trust your light because you've saved lives. You've built a name for reliability and courage. The raiders steal that trust. They turn your good work into bait for their traps. Every ship they murder makes your beacon less trustworthy. It makes honest captains doubt whether your light can be trusted. You've tried to stop them. You lit signal fires to warn approaching ships. You even rowed your tiny boat out to intercept ships heading toward false lights. But you're one man with a rowboat. They're organized criminals with proper vessels and armed crews. The best you can do is salvage what honor remains from their crimes. The bodies tell stories you don't want to read. A merchant sailor with his throat cut. Raiders don't waste time on prisoners. A young woman in noble dress. Her jewelry is gone, but her wedding ring still circles her finger, too swollen to remove easily. A child, maybe 8 years old. He died of cold exposure after surviving the initial wreck. The raiders probably didn't even see him hiding below deck. You bury them all with the same ceremony. A few words about eternal rest. A wooden cross, hammered from driftwood. A prayer that someone somewhere misses them. The graves multiply like mushrooms after rain. Each one proves your failure. The numbers are brutal. Historical records from the 1300s show that roughly 1 in 4 ships attempting to round dangerous coasts were lost. Lost to storms, raiders, or navigation errors. Along the English Channel alone, an estimated 200 vessels per year met their end on rocks and reefs. Each ship carried between 20 and 60 souls. That means 8 to 12,000 people died annually in just one stretch of water. You're supposed to reduce those numbers. That's your job, your holy mission, your reason for existence. But on nights like this, when the storm is howling and the sea is hungry, you feel like you're trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. The light burns on, faithful as sunrise. Ships will see it and think themselves safe. Some will be right, others will join the collection of bones beneath your tower, adding their names to the list of people you couldn't save. You tend the flame anyway, because the alternative would mean letting it die. That would mean every ship becomes a casualty. The light might not save them all, but it's the only chance they have, even when it's not enough. Yet the cruelest irony of your existence is that saving lives requires more than just keeping the light burning. It demands that you maintain this beacon of hope under conditions that would break most men. Every day brings new challenges, new repairs, new battles against the elements that threaten to extinguish the only thing standing between countless souls and the hungry sea. The maintenance of hope itself becomes a form of torment. The wind hits you like a fist made of ice and salt. It drives horizontal rain through every gap in your clothing. You're 60 feet above the churning sea. You're balanced on a stone ledge barely wide enough for your boots. You're trying to replace a section of glass that cracked during last night's storm. The iron framework holding the lens system weighs more than you do. It's swaying in the wind like a drunk giant. This is what passes for routine maintenance in your world. The glass you're installing isn't the precision-ground optical wonder of future centuries. This is glass made by hand in your time period. It's thick, uneven, full of air bubbles and flaws that scatter light in random directions. Each piece was made by a craftsman who learned his trade from his father, who learned it from his father. In an unbroken chain of knowledge stretching back to the Romans, the glass is beautiful in its imperfection, but it's also fragile as a newborn skull. And you're trying to install it in a windstorm. The old piece comes out in your hands like a broken promise. One moment it's reflecting your lamp's flame in dancing patterns. The next it's a collection of razor-sharp fragments trying to embed themselves in your palms. The wind catches the pieces and turns them into flying weapons. Glass shards spin into the darkness like deadly snow. You've got maybe 20 minutes before the storm gets worse. 20 minutes to position the new glass, to seal it with lead paste, to pray that your handmade engineering holds against nature's fury. The replacement glass weighs 30 pounds. It offers all the wind-catching properties of a ship's sail. Holding it steady while the wind tries to turn you into a human kite is impossible, like trying to thread a needle while riding a wild horse. The lead paste is kept warm in a small firepot, but the wind keeps trying to blow it out. You work with one hand while shielding the flame with your body. You're conscious that a single gust could send hot lead spattering across your face. The metal has to be applied while still liquid, smoothed into place with tools that craftsmen of your time would recognize. A wooden paddle, a bronze scraper, and prayers to whatever saints protect fools working at dangerous heights. Your hands shake as you position the glass. Not from fear, though there's plenty of that. From the cold. The temperature has dropped 20 degrees since sunset. The wind chill factor makes it feel like you're working inside a glacier. Your fingers are numb. This is both a blessing and a curse. You can't feel the glass cutting your palms, but you also can't feel whether your grip is secure. The glass slips. For one heart-stopping moment, 30 pounds of irreplaceable optical equipment tumbles toward the rocks below. You lunge forward, catching it against your chest. You feel the sharp edges dig through your wool tunic and into your ribs. The wind hits you both like a celestial slap. For a terrifying second, you think you're going over the edge too. But your feet find purchase on the stone ledge. You press yourself back against the tower wall. The glass is safe. You're bleeding from a dozen small cuts, but the lens is intact. You take a moment to breathe, to let your heart rate drop back below the level of panic. Then you resume your work. This is Tuesday. Tomorrow you'll do it again. The bird droppings are worse than the glass repair. Seabirds see your lighthouse as the perfect resting place. High, stable, offering commanding views of the ocean. Gulls, sea crows, and diving birds roost here in enormous numbers, particularly during migration season. They're beautiful birds, perfectly adapted to their marine environment. Ecological marvels that can fish in conditions that would kill human sailors. They also defecate like it's their job. Bird waste might be excellent fertilizer, but it's terrible for precision optics. The acidic droppings etch patterns into your carefully polished bronze reflectors, creating rough surfaces that scatter light instead of focusing it. A single night of heavy bird activity can reduce your beacon's range by half, turning your 3-mile warning light into a feeble glow that barely reaches the dangerous rocks. Cleaning it requires you to take apart the entire reflector system, piece by piece, then scrub each surface with vinegar and sand. The bronze components weigh between 50 and 200 pounds each. They have to be lowered by rope to the cleaning area. One slip means losing irreplaceable equipment to the sea, or worse, having it land on your head. The birds naturally don't appreciate your maintenance efforts. Gulls are particularly aggressive when defending their territory. They've learned to coordinate their attacks. While you're focused on cleaning one reflector, they swoop in from behind, claws extended, aiming for your eyes. You've fashioned a crude helmet from leather and iron, but it makes you look like a demented knight preparing for battle against an enemy that weighs 2 pounds and attacks from the air. The worst part is that you can't simply drive them away. Seabirds are protected by church law. They're considered God's creatures. Harming them unnecessarily is a sin. You can discourage them with noise and movement, but you can't kill them or destroy their nests. So you clean, and they defecate, and you clean again, in an endless cycle that makes you question whether humans or birds are the more intelligent species. The stone walls require constant attention. Building techniques from your time period were built to last. But last is a relative term when you're dealing with salt spray, driving rain, and temperature changes that can crack granite. The limestone blocks of your tower expand and contract with each weather cycle, creating hairline fractures that grow wider with each storm. Water seeps into these cracks, freezes during winter nights, splits the stone like a slow-motion explosion. Your repair toolkit consists of items that would be familiar to Roman engineers: iron chisels, wooden hammers, lime mortar, and an intimate knowledge of stonework passed down through generations of craftsmen. When a block cracks, you chip out the damaged section, shape a replacement piece by hand, hope your mortar mixture is strong enough to hold against the next storm. The work is harder than it sounds. Each limestone block weighs between 100 and 300 pounds. They're positioned anywhere from 10 to 60 feet above ground level. You have no pulleys, no mechanical advantage, no help from anyone. Every stone must be lifted by hand, positioned with wooden levers, secured with mortar that you mixed yourself from lime, sand, and water. The lime comes from burning seashells in a kiln. You built from salvaged bricks. The process takes 3 days and requires constant attention. Too little heat and the shells don't convert properly. Too much and they crumble to useless powder. The resulting quicklime is caustic enough to burn through skin, so you handle it with wooden tools and leather gloves, always conscious that a single mistake could blind you permanently. The sand comes from the beach, but not just any sand. It must be clean, free of salt, and composed of particles small enough to create a smooth mortar, but large enough to provide structural strength. You sieve it through cloth screens, wash it in fresh water that you can't spare, test each batch by hand to ensure the proper consistency. The water comes from your precious cistern, the same supply you need for drinking, cooking, and cleaning. Every gallon used for mortar is a gallon not available for survival, so you measure carefully and waste nothing. The mixture must be perfect. Too wet and it won't hold, too dry and it won't stick. You learn to judge consistency by feel, by the way the mortar spreads on your wooden paddle, by the sound it makes when you slap it against stone. Working at height with primitive tools is exactly as dangerous as it sounds. You fashion crude scaffolding from driftwood and rope, creating platforms that would make modern safety inspectors weep with horror. The wood is weathered, the rope is hand-twisted plant fiber that frays under load. The entire structure sways in the wind like a ship at anchor. One wrong step means a 60-foot fall onto rocks that could stop a charging bull. You've seen men die from falls half that distance, their bodies broken like discarded dolls, but the work has to be done. So you climb, you balance, you trust your makeshift equipment, and pray that today isn't the day your luck runs out. The supply hauling is perhaps the worst part of all. Everything you need must be carried up the cliff face by hand. Food, water, fuel, tools, materials. There's no road, no path, no convenient way to reach your tower except by climbing. In good weather, the ascent takes 30 minutes and leaves you exhausted. In bad weather, it becomes a life or death struggle against gravity and physics. A bag of grain weighs 60 pounds. A barrel of salted pork weighs twice that. A single replacement stone for your walls can weigh 300 pounds. You rig primitive carrying systems from rope and wood, but the physics are unforgiving. Every pound you carry is a pound your body must lift against gravity. Your body is the only mechanical advantage you have. The solution from your time period was simple. Use more people. Castle walls were built by armies of workers, each contributing their strength to the common effort. But you're alone, so you adapt. You break large loads into smaller pieces, make multiple trips, except that some tasks simply can't be completed by one person working alone. The most dangerous hauling happens during storms. When supply ships can't wait for better weather, you climb down to the landing area in driving rain, load yourself with whatever supplies you can carry, climb back up through conditions that would challenge experienced mountain climbers. The rocks are slick, the wind tries to tear you from the cliff face, the weight of your load shifts your center of gravity toward disaster. You've fallen twice, both times saved by pure luck, and the kind of reflexes that come from living constantly on the edge of death. The first time, you landed on a narrow ledge 20 feet down, bruised but alive. The second time, your rope caught on a stone projection and left you dangling like a spider on a thread, 30 feet above the churning sea. Both times, you climbed back up and continued working, because the alternative means giving up. That means the light goes out, ships die in the darkness. Your lighthouse is a monument to human stubbornness in the face of impossible odds. Every stone was placed by hand. Every piece of glass was installed by someone balanced on a cliff face. Every reflector was polished by fingers that shook with cold and fear. It's not the most elegant structure ever built, but it's yours, and it works. Most of the time, the light burns on, maintained by handmade engineering, and the kind of determination that builds civilizations one stone at a time. You'll climb those walls again tomorrow, and the day after that, every day until age or accident claims you, because someone has to tend the light. Tonight, that someone is you. As the months wear on in your isolated tower, the harsh realities of lighthouse keeping reveal themselves in ways that cut deeper than the ocean winds. The romantic notion of your calling dissolves like morning mist, replaced by the stark mathematics of survival. You begin to understand that this profession operates on principles that make even the most exploitative modern work seem generous by comparison. You thought modern temporary work was unfair? Welcome to the 1300s. Your lighthouse keeping contract makes warehouse work look like a dream job. Your wages arrive late or not at all. You earn 4 pence per day. A skilled stoneworker earns the same amount in 3 hours. But stoneworkers go home at night. They sleep in warm beds. They eat hot meals. You are trapped on a rock. Your small coins disappear faster than ships in thick fog. The math of survival is simple and cruel. Those 4 pence daily must cover everything. Lamp oil costs 2 shillings per gallon. A bushel of grain costs 1 shilling and 4 pence. Basic clothing repair costs 6 pence monthly. Do the math. You earn roughly 10 shillings monthly. You spend 12 shillings monthly. The debt grows like sea creatures on your tower's base, silent and unstoppable. Your lifeline to civilization is a supply boat. It appears as rarely as honest politicians. The captain knows exactly how desperate you are. He charges triple prices for essential supplies. Salt pork costs 3 pence per pound in town. The same pork costs 9 pence when delivered to your rock. The captain's logic is clear. You will pay whatever he demands. The alternative is death by starvation. Weather delays destroy your already tight budget. A storm keeps supply boats in harbor for 2 extra weeks. You gnaw on leather boots for food. You burn furniture for warmth. You stockpile everything like a medieval survival expert. But storage space is limited. Food spoils constantly. That expensive salt pork turns green after a month. The grain attracts mice. The mice bring disease. Disease brings problems you cannot solve with a lighthouse keeper's salary. The most terrifying truth hits you during your second year. You are not building toward anything. No retirement plan awaits loyal lighthouse keepers. No insurance protects your family when this job kills you. Every day you survive simply resets the clock. You are not earning a living. You are postponing death at barely sustainable rates. Medieval economists have not invented danger pay, but they have perfected the art of exploiting desperate workers. Penalties for abandonment include losing all wages. You might face criminal charges. The church authorities who manage most lighthouse operations view your role as combining work with punishment. You are simultaneously earning wages and paying for unknown sins. Death benefits do not exist in your world. When you inevitably fall from the tower, your family receives nothing. Your accumulated wages might reach your survivors if the authorities feel generous. Usually they do not. Your employment contract is written in Latin by church lawyers. These men have never felt sea spray on their faces. The contract reads like a document from Hell's Human Resources Department. You are bound to serve until death or dismissal. Your widow and children face immediate poverty. They often sell themselves into lifelong servitude to survive. Your sacrifice for maritime safety earns them a lifetime of slavery. The authorities prefer desperate men. These men will not complain about conditions. They will not demand better treatment. Your predecessor probably died owing money. Your successor will likely arrive in chains. The replacement system reveals the true nature of your profession. Lighthouse keepers are not recruited from skilled craftsmen. They are not ambitious young men seeking adventure. They are drawn from debtors fleeing creditors, criminals avoiding execution, broken souls with nowhere else to turn. You are not just underpaid, you are socially disposable. You serve in a role designed to consume human lives without generating public concern. This creates a workforce of the fundamentally expendable. The local sheriff recommends lighthouse duty to troublemakers as an alternative to hanging. Priests suggest it to parishioners whose sins require dramatic punishment. Families dump embarrassing relatives into lighthouse positions. The economics extend beyond mere wages. You cannot accumulate wealth because you cannot access normal economic opportunities. No side businesses, no property investments, no guild memberships that might provide security. You exist in a bubble of enforced poverty. You earn just enough to survive while remaining too isolated to improve your situation. It is economic imprisonment disguised as employment. Compare this to modern minimum wage work. At least those workers can clock out. They can file complaints. You can quit for better opportunities. You are locked into a system that combines the worst aspects of employment with the worst aspects of imprisonment. Your situation perfectly embodies medieval labor relations. You are valuable enough to keep functioning but expendable enough to replace without concern. The lighthouse must operate. But lighthouse keepers are interchangeable parts in a machine designed by people who will never experience its grinding mechanisms. The final insult is that your poverty serves everyone else's prosperity. Ships navigate safely because you are too poor to abandon your post. Maritime trade flourishes because you are too desperate to demand better conditions. Your economic suffering enables others' economic success. Your misery is literally profitable for everyone except you. Welcome to the gig economy's medieval ancestor. The gig never ends. The economy never improves. But the cruel mathematics of your financial situation pale in comparison to what this profession does to your physical body. As you progress deeper into your service, the tower itself becomes a source of slow, methodical destruction. The very environment that you maintain to save others gradually kills you with scientific precision. The morning cough that started as a minor irritation now produces blood-flecked spit. It spatters your stone walls like abstract art painted in biological waste. Your lungs are slowly turning to leather. After 18 months of constant exposure to lamp smoke, each breath feels like inhaling ground glass mixed with tar. Medieval medicine has not identified the connection between work exposure and lung disease, but your body keeps careful records. The smoke is unavoidable and unfiltered. Your lamp burns continuously. It produces thick, oily vapors that soak into every surface of your cramped quarters. The ventilation system consists of whatever gaps exist in your stone walls. Your breathing system is dissolving from the inside. The constant irritation inflames your throat and lungs. This creates ideal conditions for bacterial infections that medieval medicine cannot identify. It certainly cannot treat them. This means you are essentially living inside a giant chimney. Modern industrial workers get breathing masks and exposure limits. You get a damp cloth to cover your mouth when the smoke becomes unbearable. This happens roughly 16 hours daily. What starts as a persistent cough evolves into consumption. This lung disease kills roughly 1 in 4 adults in your era. The combination of poor nutrition, constant exposure to irritants, and complete isolation creates a perfect storm for breathing failure. Everything is made slippery by constant moisture and oil spills. Every climb to service the lamp is a potential death sentence. Every descent is a game of medieval Russian roulette. But breathing problems are just the opening act in your medical horror show. The real fun begins when you factor in the daily opportunities for traumatic injury. Your workspace is a vertical maze of stone steps, narrow passages, and dangerous platforms. Falls kill lighthouse keepers with depressing regularity. The statistics, if anyone bothered keeping them, would make modern construction work look safe. You are constantly carrying heavy oil containers up narrow spiral stairs while exhausted and potentially drunk. Burns are your constant companion. The lamp's flame reaches temperatures that can melt copper. You work around it daily with unsteady hands and impaired judgment. Hot oil splashes from the lamp mechanism, scalding exposed skin. You have to drink something, and ale is safer than water. One missed step sends you tumbling down 40 feet of stone steps. You bounce like a meat-filled sack until physics and architecture combine to end your career permanently. These wounds never properly heal in your unsanitary environment. Medieval burn treatment consists of applying various animal fats and hoping for the best. This strategy is roughly as effective as treating gunshot wounds with small bandages. Hallucinations begin subtly. Shadows move wrong. Sounds exist that shouldn't. Conversations happen with people who are not there. After 6 months alone, you hold detailed discussions with imaginary visitors. They seem more real than the supply boat crew who visits monthly. The isolation does things to your mind that make physical injuries seem trivial. Humans are not designed for complete social isolation. Your brain responds to the deprivation by creating its own entertainment. The madness progresses with medieval efficiency. What starts as loneliness evolves into depression, then paranoia, then complete psychological breakdown. You begin to believe that ships are deliberately ignoring your light. You think the supply boat captain is poisoning your food. You believe voices in the wind are plotting your destruction. The line between reality and delusion blurs until you cannot distinguish between actual threats and imagined ones. Jumping from the tower offers a quick escape from a slow death. Many lighthouse keepers choose this option. The authorities typically record these deaths as accidents. Suicide carries spiritual penalties that complicate the paperwork. Suicide becomes a rational career move. The mental health resources available to you consist of prayer and alcohol. Neither addresses the fundamental problem of being trapped in an impossible situation. Your death, when it comes, might not be discovered for months. The lighthouse continues operating as long as there is oil in the lamp and someone to tend it. If you die during summer months when supply boats visit regularly, your body might be found within weeks. The discovery process is particularly unpleasant. Your replacement typically finds skeletal remains scattered by rats and seabirds. Personal effects lie around that the scavengers could not consume. The new keeper's first job involves cleaning human remains from his future workplace. If you die during winter storms that keep boats in harbor, your corpse could decay in the tower until spring. You slowly decompose while ships navigate by your ghostly light. This is a medieval orientation program that combines janitorial work with mortality reminders. Disease outbreaks add another layer of horror to your situation. When plague strikes the mainland, you are simultaneously safer and more vulnerable than the general population. Safer because isolation protects you from initial infection. More vulnerable because if disease does reach you, there is no help available. Supply boats stop running during plague outbreaks. You are left to survive on stockpiled resources while wondering if the next visitor will bring salvation or death. The plague scenario reveals the true nature of your expendability. During the Black Death, lighthouse keepers were essentially written off as acceptable casualties. The authorities reasoned that maritime navigation was less important than containing disease spread. Isolated keepers were abandoned to survive or die based on their existing resources. Many starved to death waiting for supply boats that never came. Their lights eventually failed as they died at their posts. Medieval understanding of occupational health is roughly equivalent to modern understanding of quantum physics, theoretically possible, but practically non-existent. The connection between working conditions and life expectancy has not been established. Your gradual deterioration is considered natural rather than preventable. You are not dying from occupational hazards. You are dying from moral failings, genetic weakness, or divine punishment for unspecified sins. The mortality statistics, if anyone cared to compile them, would be staggering. Lighthouse keepers die at rates that make medieval warfare look safe, but their deaths are scattered across time and geography. This makes the pattern invisible to authorities. You are part of a profession with life expectancy measured in months rather than years, but the system continues because individual deaths do not impact overall operations. Your death will be recorded as another workplace accident. It will be filed away with minimal investigation and quickly forgotten. The lighthouse will continue operating under your replacement. You will face identical conditions and probably die within similar time frames. And so after years of enduring this systematic destruction of body and mind, you arrive at the inevitable conclusion of every lighthouse keeper's career. The question is not whether you will die from this work, but merely how and when. The historical records, sparse as they are, paint a picture so grim that modern insurance companies would refuse to cover lighthouse keepers at any price. The cycle continues because the system works for everyone except the people actually doing the work. This is a medieval preview of modern corporate culture. Worker mortality is an acceptable cost of doing business. You lived slightly longer than others, but this was only because the job required strong, healthy people. The lighthouse life itself gave no protection. You have lived through the harsh life of a tower lightkeeper from the old times. Now comes the final truth about how your career would end. Warning, it was not from old age with family around you. Records from the old days paint a terrible picture. The average lighthouse keeper lived to age 42. Most people in those days lived to only 35 minus 40 years. Accidental death claimed 34% of all keeper deaths. You would most likely die from falling, not a dramatic fall from the tower during a storm. Instead, you would slip on wet stones while carrying fuel. The Great Lighthouse at Alexandria kept records of keepers smashed on the rocks like eggs. This happened during everyday work. Tower builders used no safety rails. They had no backup systems. One moment you adjust a mirror, the next you discover if the afterlife pays workers. Here is the frightening truth. You were 3 times more likely to die violently than other people. Church records from a French religious house in the 1100s kept careful notes about keeper deaths. Between 1147 and 1203, they employed 127 keepers. Exactly 89 died from job-related causes. Tower fires killed almost as many as falls. Remember that open flame surrounded by oil-soaked materials. Church records show 17 keepers burned by their own beacon between 1190 and 1210. These were not quick deaths. Burn victims often lived for days in terrible pain. Their screams echoed across the water as warnings to passing ships. The cruel irony was clear. Lighthouse keepers often became the very danger they tried to prevent. Disease and sickness claimed 28% of keeper deaths. Your isolated position made you perfect prey for every disease. Unlike town people who built immunity through constant exposure, your lonely life meant any passing sailor could bring deadly illness. The Great Plague of 1348 eliminated entire generations of lighthouse keepers, not through disease itself, but through abandonment when supply ships stopped running. Lung diseases killed more keepers than storms ever did. Constant exposure to smoke, salt air, and freezing temperatures created perfect conditions for lung destruction. You would literally cough yourself to death. Your lungs would fill with fluid while you desperately tried to keep your beacon burning. Mental breakdown accounted for 19% of keeper deaths. Old records called this afflicted with madness. The reality was systematic destruction of the mind. Keepers would simply walk into the sea, leaving their lights burning. Some keepers were found talking to invisible people and making offerings to nothing. Others built shrines to imaginary saints. Some covered their towers with increasingly frantic religious writings. The most disturbing cases involved keepers who began deliberately putting out their lights. They believed they were saving ships from some greater danger only they could see. These men had crossed from sanity into a realm where their protective instincts had twisted into something dark. Recovery was unknown. Once madness claimed a keeper, replacement was the only option. Violence and abandonment claimed 11% of keeper deaths. Pirates, raiders, and desperate sailors sometimes saw lighthouse keepers as easy targets. Your isolation made you vulnerable. Your supplies made you valuable. Your inability to flee made you easy prey. Irish records describe lighthouse keepers killed by sea wolves with disturbing regularity. Some keepers simply vanished, leaving only bloodstains and dead flames. But abandonment could be just as deadly as violence. When supply ships failed to arrive, keepers faced a choice between starvation and abandoning their posts. Church records occasionally mention lighthouse keepers found months after death. Their bodies were dried by salt air, still seated at their watchposts. The keepers' final duties claimed 8% of deaths. Perhaps most tragically, some keepers died from devotion to duty. Storm-related deaths came not from being swept away, but from refusing to abandon posts when structures began failing. One record describes a keeper named Godwin, who continued tending his beacon, even as his tower's foundation cracked during a winter storm. His body was found 3 days later, crushed beneath fallen stone. One hand still gripped his oil lamp. When you died, your family's suffering would only begin. Your death would not bring closure to your family's suffering. It would only begin a new chapter of misery. Lighthouse keeping offered no pension plans, no death benefits, no insurance payouts. When you died, your family faced immediate poverty. These men understood that their deaths might save dozens of ships, but society offered no honors after death, no monuments, no recognition. They simply disappeared from records, replaced by the next desperate soul willing to trade probable death for minimal wages. Your death would create a vacancy that lighthouse authorities filled from society's most desperate populations. Records show a clear pattern. Lighthouse keepers were recruited from debtors, minor criminals, religious penitents, and men who had lost everything to war or plague. The lighthouse service showed no sentiment about your family's suffering. Replacement keepers were often installed within days of your death, sometimes before your body had been properly buried. Your personal possessions became property of the hiring authority. Your family was evicted to make room for the next keeper's household. Keepers' widows had few options. Some became washerwomen or seamstresses, earning barely enough to survive. Others remarried quickly, often to men who viewed them as damaged goods. Children of dead keepers frequently entered religious houses, not from faith, but from desperation. Religious communities at least provided food and shelter. The job attracted men who had already accepted that their lives were essentially over. Former soldiers with crippling injuries, farmers whose lands had been seized, craftsmen ruined by guild politics. These were the men who chose lighthouse duty. They were not heroes seeking adventure. They were broken men seeking any alternative to starvation. Church authorities particularly favored recruiting from among repentant sinners. They viewed lighthouse duty as a form of punishment on earth. The logic was sound: if you were going to die anyway, why not die in service to Christian travelers? This recruitment method ensured a steady supply of keepers, while providing the church with a convenient dumping ground for problematic members. This creates a workforce of the fundamentally expendable. The local sheriff recommends lighthouse duty to troublemakers as an alternative to hanging. Priests suggest it to parishioners whose sins require dramatic punishment. Families dump embarrassing relatives into lighthouse positions. So here you are, at the end of your imaginary lighthouse keeping career. Hopefully you are still alive enough to read this conclusion. You have survived the brutal recruitment process. You have endured the crushing isolation. You have battled the elements. You have witnessed the statistical reality of your profession's death rate. And yet, despite this grim reality, something remarkable would happen to your story in the centuries that followed. The brutal truth of your existence would be transformed, polished, and repackaged into something almost unrecognizable. The lighthouse keeper's tale would become one of history's most dramatic examples of how time and distance can completely rewrite human suffering into inspiring fiction. You are not just underpaid, you are socially disposable. You serve in a role designed to consume human lives without generating public concern. This modern story would be laughable if it were not so completely divorced from historical reality. The lighthouse keeper of popular imagination is a voluntary hermit. He is a philosophical guardian who trades society's comforts for the profound satisfaction of guiding ships to safety. He is portrayed as someone who chose his isolation, someone who finds peace in solitude, someone who derives deep meaning from his essential work. Now it is time to confront the vast difference between romantic lighthouse stories of today and the reality you have just experienced. Walk into any gift shop near a lighthouse today. You will find shelves lined with paintings of noble keepers standing strong against crashing waves. Their faces are lit by the warm glow of their beacon. You will see coffee mugs saying "Lighthouse Keeper, Guardian of the Sea." You will find decorative signs reading "Home is where the lighthouse is." You will see countless books depicting lighthouse keepers as wise, weathered men who chose their calling from deep love of the sea.